No one knows what will actually happen in the future midterms because it depends on you and the voters and what people do. But we are getting indicators that are pretty striking. Texas, which is a ruby red, very pro-Trump state, is closer than it's ever been in the modern era for Democrats to take back, which means even if they don't ultimately win this Texas race, there's a lot of indicators there about how rough the Republicans are doing. The Democratic push to flip the Senate basically boils down to these 6 states. You see Texas at the bottom. In Maine, Dems are looking for a new candidate to replace the scandal-plagued Graham Plattner, but some Democrats say this actually is a blessing to get it figured out in advance of the deadlines, and they can put someone stronger in. So there's been a lot of attention, as you've probably noticed, on that state this week. But we're turning to Texas, where Democrat James Talarico is going up against what many in the party, in the GOP, see as a big Trump mistake, ousting a relatively established incumbent senator who's won Senate races there before and putting in this Trumpy Republican Attorney General candidate, Ken Paxton. That has tightened what was already a tightening race. Look at this. Today, according to the reputable New York Times poll, they are tied within the margin of error, which means, if you believe that poll, it's anyone's race. A lot closer than we usually see between the parties there. Both campaigns also had to put out their fundraising numbers, and look at that. The excitement for the Democrat dwarfing Paxton's struggle, having been in a kind of costly and divided Republican civil war. He's got Trump's backing, but he doesn't have Trump's money yet. Paxton comes into this race with many scandals, and those have become attack ads from Republicans even during that Civil War primary I mentioned.
Crooked Ken Paxton cheated on his wife. She's divorcing him on biblical grounds. So now Paxton's wrecking another home, sleeping around with a married mother of 7.
Why does Ken Paxton go easy on child predators? A Waco attorney, Adam Hoffman, sexually abused a child for 3 years, and Paxton gutted the case, offering him just a slap on the wrist.
Those are the ads that Texas Republicans and other voters have already been hearing about. And if they have a long memory, Paxton was previously impeached by Republicans for alleged corruption. We should note he was acquitted by the Texas Senate. But for all the narratives we hear about everything being super partisan, this is a reminder that at least at the state level, there were some Republicans trying to hold this other Republican accountable for alleged corruption. He was also criminally indicted for fraud, charges that were later dismissed. Again, he is legally presumed innocent and was not convicted in those cases. But the question of whether you think he should get a promotion to write new laws and be a powerful person is a very different standard than him escaping criminal conviction. Paxton has a new controversy this week. He may have broken an election law that he had promised to enforce using this address where apparently, allegedly, he did not live while repeatedly voting. For his part, Paxton says he did follow the relevant law. Talarico has been hammering Paxton on this. The strategy has focused on the other side of questioning the Democrats' masculinity, a kind of attack, the Wall Street Journal notes, that we've heard before. Whether it works in a down economy with this kind of alternative is an open question. Now, Democrats have long talked about flipping Texas and never done it. But the story we're telling you tonight is not just about whether or not they get over the line. It is a story about Donald Trump dragging down the Republican Party, interfering in a way that put in a less viable candidate, that's the Trump effect, and if you are spending money and energy to defend a red seat you're supposed to win in Texas, how much worse is it for Republicans on defense in the rest of the country?
They claim the AG used secret email accounts, burner phones, and a fake Uber account to see his mistress.
Paxton is a repugnant character. He's always been on the edge of sort of criminal activity.
3 felony fraud charges which have lingered for 9 long years.
And in between it all, the state's top attorney had a mugshot.
There are calls for Ken Paxton to step down.
James Talarico is a hypocrite when it comes to fighting for families. Talarico wants to teach trans ideology in schools and let boys compete in girls' sports. Talarico says it's immoral to use the oil and gas that employs millions of Texans.
That's what Texas voters are already seeing in the clash between these two folks who want to be the senator from Texas. A much closer race than usual. Democrats feeling optimistic. As promised, we're bringing in Jeremy Wallace, political reporter for the Houston Chronicle, who's been closely watching all of this, and Obama campaign vet Che Komanduri. Jeremy, is it closer than usual? And what are you seeing on the ground that we might not notice nationally?
Yeah, it's closer than usual on a couple of fronts here. Look, we've had some close polling before with Beto O'Rourke when he ran in 2018, and even Colin Allred in 2024. There were close poll numbers. But when you dig into the poll numbers, both in that New York Times poll and the University of Texas poll that has also come out recently, you see how the reason this is so competitive is Ken Paxton is just losing independents like crazy. I've never seen numbers this low with independents. He's at 12% with independents. Understand that even Ted Cruz in his worst moments was never under 20%. Ken Paxton has a two-front war he has to deal with. One, he's trying to figure out how do you bring back those Republicans who did not vote for him and voted for John Cornyn and have always had a problem with him, right? You heard it in those clips before. He has a lot of Republican repair work to do. So he has one front there, and then he has to fight this other front war with independents who clearly don't like what they've seen from him, and they like Tallarico. Tallarico's hovering around 40% with independents, which is better than Beto O'Rourke or Colin Allred were at the same point back in their campaigns when we were going into the heat of summer, going into the midterm cycles.
You're deep in the polling and what they call the crosstabs, and I know that gets Che excited because he's a huge campaign nerd, and they love that kind of stuff, you know?
Absolutely.
It's like candy to them. Jeremy, before I bring Che in, you can see how excited he looks. I mean, we know him. He's excited. Jeremy, before I bring him in, you mentioned that that rough number with independents. Is that something that Paxton, you think, can still change because he's now in a different light? Or, given so much voltage and controversy around his history, is it baked in?
Yeah, it's partly baked in and partly because of President Trump, right? You know, with this war going on and these gas prices starting to creep up again, it's like that was the worst and the last thing that Ken Paxton needed. Like he needed that trend line to keep going so maybe people, you know, wouldn't be upset about that. He's now got to figure out how do I get, you know, Republicans excited about me? Remember, there's not much else on the ballot here in Texas that's going to be driving the electorate. There, you know, the governor has his race, you know, and he's going to be doing his work. But he's in a different situation than Ken Paxton. Paxton's on his own. He needs to get out there and start, you know, trying to define who he is and try to present a better message. But here the thing is, he has no money. Like you pointed in the fundraising, you got to understand that $70 million that James Tallarico has raised so far is historic from a Texas perspective. That is twice the amount of money that Colin Allred or Beto O'Rourke had at the same point in July going into the election cycle.